I won't, Ma. Thank you for this opportunity. As Deborah left the office, her heart swelled with determination. This was the beginning of her journey, and she was ready to prove herself. What she didn't know was that fate was slowly aligning her path with someone from her family, someone she had never imagined meeting. Deborah adjusted her white nurse's uniform and clipped her ID badge onto her chest. It had been 6 months since she started working at Daniel Memorial Hospital, and every day had been a learning experience. She had faced emergencies, assisted in surgeries, and comforted families in difficult moments. One morning, as Nurse Deborah was walking along the pediatric department carrying a tray of medicine, a young boy around 5 years called out to her, "Nurse Deborah." "Yes, dear," she replied. Deborah crouched beside his bed and whispered, "If you take it, I'll tell you a new story about the brave princess who saved her kingdom." His eyes lit up. "Okay." He quickly swallowed the medicine, making a funny face afterward. Deborah laughed and ruffled his hair before moving on to check on other patients. She loved her job even though it was demanding. There were days she went home exhausted, but knowing she had made a difference kept her going. One afternoon, while she was filling out a patient's chart, a senior nurse walked up to her. "Deborah, the hospital director wants to see you in his office." She frowned slightly. "The director? Did I do something wrong?" The nurse shrugged. "I don't know, but you should go now." Taking a deep breath, Deborah made her way to the executive floor. This was the first time she had been called to meet the director. As she reached the door labeled Dr. David Daniel, Managing Director, she knocked gently. "Come in," a deep voice responded. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The office was spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A young man in a crisp white coat sat behind a large desk, flipping through some files. He finally looked up. The moment their eyes met, Deborah froze. Something about him felt oddly familiar. And then, her eyes fell on the black spot on his neck. Her heart skipped a beat. Who was this man? And why did he have the same birthmark as her? Deborah couldn't shake the feeling as she left the director's office. The moment she had seen the black spot on his neck, something deep inside her stirred. It wasn't just a coincidence, she was sure of it. That night, as she helped her mother clear the dinner table, she hesitated before speaking. "Mama," she finally said, placing a plate in the sink. "Do you believe birthmarks can mean something?" Her mother, who was drying her hands, turned to look at her. "Why do you ask?" Deborah swallowed, choosing her words carefully. "There's a man at my workplace. He has the same black spot I have. But his is on his neck." Her mother froze for a split second before forcing a smile. "Lots of people have birthmarks, my dear. It doesn't always mean something." Deborah narrowed her eyes. "But what if it does? What if he's connected to me somehow?" Her mother sighed, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Deborah, you are my daughter. Your birthmark is yours alone. Don't go looking for meaning in everything." "But Mama." "Enough, Deborah," she said softly but firmly. "Some things are better left alone." Her mother walked away, but Deborah could see the tension in her shoulders. Something wasn't right. Her mother knew something but wasn't telling her. And now, Deborah was more determined than ever to find out who Dr. David Daniel really was. David sat across from his mother, Lillian, in their spacious living room. The evening was quiet, but his heart was restless. He had thought about this moment for years. He had rehearsed the words in his mind, but now that he was sitting in front of his mother, his throat felt dry. Still, he had to ask. "Mom, who is my father?" Lillian's hand froze on the cup of tea she was holding. Slowly, she placed it on the table and looked at him. David could see the pain in her eyes, a deep, hidden sorrow she had never spoken about. "David, why are you asking me this now?" she asked, her voice soft but cautious. David sighed, running a hand through his hair. Mom, I'm a grown man. I've lived my whole life without knowing where I came from. You've given me everything, love, education, a future, but I don't know half of who I am. Lillian exhaled deeply. She had always known this day would come, but that didn't make it any easier. David, she said gently, some stories are better left in the past. David frowned. Mom, please. I have a right to know. Even if it's painful. Lillian swallowed hard. Her hands trembled slightly as she clasped them together. Your father was never a part of your life. He never wanted to be. And I never wanted you to carry the weight of his sins. David's heart pounded. What do you mean, sins? Lillian looked away, blinking rapidly. It doesn't matter. What matters is that I raised you with love. I gave you everything I could. Please, my son, let this go. David sat back, disappointment settling in his chest. He could see the finality in her eyes. His mother was hiding something. And now, more than ever, he was determined to find out the truth. David sat in his luxurious office, his hands resting on the polished mahogany desk, but his mind was far from the paperwork in front of him. The air-conditioned room was cool, the scent of fresh roses from the vase on his desk filled the air, yet inside, he felt an unsettling warmth, an anxiety that refused to leave him. For the past few weeks, his mother's words had echoed in his mind. Your father was never a part of your life. He never wanted to be. And I never wanted you to carry the weight of his sins. What sins? Who was this man? Where was he from? What did he even look like? David let out a frustrated sigh, rubbing his temples. He had spent years studying the human body, understanding its complexities, diagnosing illnesses, and saving lives. But the one mystery he couldn't solve was his own identity. He turned his chair toward the massive floor-to-ceiling window, staring at the city skyline. It was funny, he had built a successful life, become a respected medical doctor, and now, the managing director of one of the biggest hospitals in the state. Yet, it felt like a puzzle with a missing piece. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Come in, he said, sitting up. His secretary, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Thompson, walked in, holding a file. Sir, these are the reports you asked for. David nodded, taking the file, but his mind was elsewhere. As she turned to leave, he suddenly asked, Mrs. Thompson, do you think a person can live a fulfilling life without knowing where they come from? She paused, surprised by the question. Well, sir, I believe knowing one's roots gives a person a sense of identity. But sometimes, the past can be painful. It depends on what you're searching for. David nodded slowly. Exactly. He wasn't sure if the truth would bring him peace or pain. But one thing was clear, he couldn't ignore it anymore. He needed to find out who his father was. David sat across from his mother in the grand living room of their home. The dim glow of the chandelier cast soft shadows on the walls, but the tension between them was anything but soft. Lillian had been unusually quiet ever since he asked to see her again. Now, she sat stiffly, her fingers intertwined, her eyes avoiding his. Mom, David's voice was gentle but firm. I need to know. I can't keep pretending that it doesn't matter. Who is my father? Lillian inhaled deeply, her chest rising and falling as if the weight of the past was pressing down on her. She had always known this day would come, but now that it was here, the words felt impossible to say. Tears gathered in her eyes as she looked at her son, the child she had fought so hard to raise, the boy who had become a man without the shadow of his father haunting him. My son, she whispered, her voice trembling. The truth is, I never wanted you to know because the pain of that night still burns in my soul. David felt his chest tighten. Mom, please, whatever it is, I need to hear it. Lillian wiped her tears and swallowed hard. I was 13 when I became pregnant with you, David. I didn't know what had happened to me until it was too late. One moment, I was a child running errands, helping my guardian, Auntie Nora. The next, I was carrying a child I didn't understand. David's breath caught in his throat. His mother's words sent a chill through his body. She continued, tears streaming down her face. I was drugged, David. By someone I trusted. Someone who lived under the same roof as me. And when I woke up, my childhood was gone. David clenched his fist, his heart pounding. Who did this to you? Lillian shook her head, her voice breaking. His name doesn't matter, David. What matters is that you were born out of something terrible, but you became the greatest thing that ever happened to me. David's jaw tightened. He felt anger, confusion, and sadness all at once. Mom, how could you carry all this pain alone? Lillian reached for his hand, her fingers trembling. Because I didn't want you to carry it with me. I wanted you to grow up without hate in your heart. Without the burden of a past you had no part in. David swallowed hard, his mind racing. His whole life, he had wondered about his father. Now, knowing the truth, a storm raged inside him. Then Lillian reached out and touched the black spot on his neck, her tears falling freely. This spot, David, it's the only thing he left on you. And for years, I prayed it wouldn't remind me of him. But instead, it reminds me of how strong you are. How you overcame everything to become who you are today. David looked down, touching the spot himself. It had always been there, a part of him he never questioned. But now, it felt like a brand, a mark left by a man he had never met but whose actions had shaped his entire existence. Tears welled in his eyes, but he refused to let them fall. He had too many emotions running through him. After a long silence, he finally spoke. Mom, I need time to process this. But I promise you, I will never let what happened define me. Lillian let out a shaky breath, nodding as fresh tears spilled from her eyes. That's all I ever wanted, my son. That's all I ever wanted. Deborah sat on her bed, scrolling through her phone absent-mindedly. She had been unable to shake the strange feeling she had ever since she noticed the black spot on her director's neck. Something about it felt too familiar, too personal. She had grown up hearing her mother talk about how her baby girl was born with a unique black spot, just like the one she had seen on Dr. David. But it couldn't be a coincidence, could it? Deborah sat up suddenly, her mind racing. Who exactly is Dr. David? She decided to do some research. Opening her laptop, she typed his full name into the search bar, Dr. David Daniel, Managing Director of Lifeline Specialist Hospital. A list of results popped up instantly. Articles about his achievements, his first-class degree, his medical breakthroughs, everything about his success was there. But there was almost nothing about his personal life. Deborah sighed, rubbing her temples. There has to be something more. She scrolled further, clicking on an old article from a local news site. The headline caught her attention. From struggle to success, the story of Dr. David Daniel. She leaned forward, reading every word carefully. It spoke about how he was raised by a wealthy woman named Mrs. Daniel, how he excelled in school, and how he became a doctor at a young age. But there was one line that made Deborah freeze. David's mother, Lillian, gave birth to him under difficult circumstances, growing up without knowing his father. Deborah's heart pounded. Lillian. She quickly scrolled down, searching for a picture of his mother. And when she saw it, her breath caught in her throat. The woman in the picture looked so strange. She had aged, but Deborah couldn't recognize her face. Deborah reached for her phone, then called her mother. Mother, you haven't told me anything about the black spot on my shoulder. Her mother sighed. Deborah, listen to me. Be very careful about what you're digging into. Some things are better left alone. Deborah frowned. Mama, do you know something? I didn't say that, her mother replied quickly. I'm just saying, if what you're thinking is true, then a lot of painful memories might come back. Deborah swallowed hard. She could feel it, something big was about to unfold. And she wasn't going to stop until she knew the full truth. Deborah's heart raced as she walked through the long, polished hallway leading to Dr. David's office. She had been summoned unexpectedly, and although she tried to remain calm, she couldn't shake the nervousness building inside her. She knocked softly on the heavy wooden door. Come in, Dr. David's deep voice called from inside. Taking a deep breath, Deborah pushed the door open and stepped inside. The office was as luxurious as she had imagined, huge glass windows, expensive furniture, and neatly arranged files on the massive desk where Dr. David sat, flipping through a document. Good afternoon, sir, she greeted respectfully. Dr. David looked up at her, his sharp eyes scanning her face. Sit down, Nurse Deborah, he said, gesturing to the chair in front of his desk. She obeyed, sitting with her hands neatly folded on her lap. Dr. David closed the file he was reading and leaned slightly forward. I called you here because I received a report about you, he said, watching her closely. Deborah swallowed. A report. Yes. He picked up the file again, tapping it lightly. It says here that you have been questioning some of the senior doctor's methods and have disagreed with certain medical decisions. Deborah's eyes widened slightly, but she quickly composed herself. Sir, I wouldn't say I was questioning their methods, she responded politely. I was only offering alternative solutions where I felt they were necessary. In medical practice, I believe it's important to consider different perspectives, especially when it concerns the well-being of a patient. Dr. David raised an eyebrow, impressed by how calmly she defended herself. So you think you know better than doctors who have been practicing for years? Deborah shook her head. Not at all, sir. I respect their experience, but I also believe that fresh ideas and different viewpoints can sometimes make a difference. I wasn't trying to challenge anyone, I was only doing what I believed was best for the patient. Dr. David watched her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he leaned back in his chair. You're quite confident, he remarked. Deborah kept her gaze steady. I believe confidence is important in my line of work, sir. Dr. David exhaled and nodded. Very well. I appreciate your dedication to your work, Nurse Deborah. Just be careful how you approach certain matters. Not everyone will take your confidence the right way. I understand, sir, she replied with a small nod. Dr. David closed the file and placed it aside. That will be all for now. Deborah stood up and adjusted her uniform. Thank you for your time, sir. As she turned to leave, Dr. David suddenly spoke again. One more thing, Nurse Deborah. She stopped and turned back to him. His eyes locked onto hers. Where did you grow up? Deborah's breath caught for a second, but she quickly composed herself. Here in Rivers State, sir. Dr. David nodded slowly. Interesting. He didn't say anything more, so Deborah gave him a small, polite smile and walked out of his office, feeling a strange weight settle in her chest. Something about the way he asked that question, it almost felt like he was searching for something. Thank you for joining me on this Africa folklore. Your likes, comments, shares and subscriptions means the whole world to me. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay updated on new stories and folklore from Africa.